You want something done right, do it yourself. DIY. When we think of DIY, what immediately comes to mind? Home improvement projects, right? Ready to be that next HGTV star. Well, to be honest with you, I hate DIY home improvement. Despite being born and raised in the Midwest and having plenty of role models, I'm just not a heavy person. And for a guy from the Midwest, that is basically blasphemy. But what did I do when I bought my first home? I fell into the DIY trap. I thought I'll save some money, do it myself, like a good Midwesterner. Despite my upbringing, many YouTube videos, and serious effort, it just never comes together for me. The results are always the same. Countless trips to our hardware store, endless frustrations, and the worst part, wasting the time, money, and energy to have the person I will eventually hire redo it all.
Welcome, everyone. Together We Serve TV show. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I'm so excited. We're going to learn how to together weekend as a tribe, community, as a group, whatever you want to call it, serve others, serve each other, and impact. Impact is the key. And have you ever been curious? If you didn't raise your hand, you should be raising your hand because we're all curious. We were curious when we were young. We were curious as teenagers. We're curious as young adults. I'm 64. I'm still curious. And if you're not, you need to learn that. We're going to learn a lot about curiosity, leadership, and serving today. So let's bring on our guest today. Jon, welcome to Together We Serve, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. Curiosity over control. I'm going to take that title. What the heck are we talking about?
Curiosity, it's the new way to lead. If you want to be a leader that's going to unlock innovation, inspire your teams, and drive change, curiosity is the only way to do it.
Now, I think of curiosity as a kid. You know, I'm that 6-year-old. I'm like playing in the dirt, getting my hands dirty, playing, well, what's this little caterpillar? Talk about it from the leadership / adult stage of our lives.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, even me looking back at curiosity as a kid, it was probably a little more of a stubborn personality. You know, the kid that was willing to question adults and challenge the status quo. But when I moved into leadership in a professional way of utilizing curiosity, what it did was allow me to step into roles, work for organizations, even as a junior employee, and bring an inquisitive nature. And really from a curiosity standpoint, not a judgmental standpoint, as Ted Lasso says, but really just like finding better ways to do things. You know, it starts with just asking genuine questions of why we're doing something a certain way, and is there an opportunity to change that? And doing that as an employee kind of helps set the framework for me. And then as a leader, the secret sauce is allowing our teams to have that curiosity themselves, allowing people to speak up, speak out, bring ideas, point out problems, you know, break down silos, break down hierarchy, you know, never hear those words again of stay in your lane or that's above your pay grade, but truly allow people to engage with one another and bring forth the best ideas.
Yeah, I love that. Ted Lasso, what he's talking about is be curious, not judgmental. He talks about that through the show, and I actually have the sign right behind me. That's why I'm so excited if you be my guest. It's blurred out, but it's right behind me. Because I love the curiosity. He's at least asking questions, passion, you know, all that, which we'll get into. But I want you to take a few minutes and tell us your background, because it's very unique and different, why you jumped into this curiosity leadership.
Yeah. So, you know, I actually, you know, the whole notion of curiosity didn't strike me at first, right? I didn't just one day wake up like, man, I'm a curious person. It actually was first introduced to me about, 10, 12 years ago. I was making a career change and did what most people do, which is, dust off the digital Rolodex of LinkedIn and started reaching out to old friends, colleagues, and a friend from college introduced me to a colleague of hers who was an academic, who his superpower was helping people to define their superpower. So I worked with him, one-on-one interviews and questionnaires, that sort of thing. And it came back as curiosity. I was like, well, great. It didn't really ring my bell at the moment, but I thought it was cool. I'm a curious person and like taking assessments and seeing how it lines up with what I view. But fast forward to a couple of years ago, and I was working with a branding company, and part of that was doing a deep dive one-on-one as well. And almost the exact same words came back, which was, Jon, curiosity is your superpower. So I really started thinking about that, and again, think about my childhood, how like I've always been that kid who sat around the adults and was willing to ask questions and engage in conversations. And even times in my childhood, kind of push back to the beliefs I was told to have in this and that. And it really kind of fostered me to explore, what I view in life and in the world, and pushed me to become a philosophy major in undergrad and onto law school, which obviously, two areas that are just, intertwined with the idea of questioning and pushing back and arguing. So there's some times in my youth that I was seen as a troublemaker, right? Because I was willing to push back and challenge things. And that's for a Midwest upbringing, that's not something that's always allowed. But when I moved into my career, that's really where I saw how curiosity can be harnessed to really push for innovation, growth, and change.
What's interesting, as you were saying, two things came to my head was what they tell us as kids, what do the teachers say? Kids are always curious, but then it goes away. As maybe we get busy, maybe a lot going on, maybe social, whatever that is, it does go away. The other thing that I want you to talk about is you said questions. And I talk about that all the time. Ask, shut up, listen, ask those questions. Tie questioning into curiosity.
Sure. So, curiosity to me is about helping us find the true problem that's existing. Go deep, not just surface level problems, but go deep into what's holding us back, what's hindering us as leaders, organizations, as individuals, but also in asking questions to explore the impossible, looking beyond our current situations and own limitations. And so the best way to do both is to ask questions. And a quick little story. Personal story, I'll try to make it short. My wife and I were both trying to find out if we wanted to upgrade our phones to get a free one before our time was up and everything, and we could change our plan. And she was stuck on the fact that if we upgraded our plans, we lose our international data credits. Well, that's not what I was seeing. And she asked a genuine question to Verizon, which was, hey, if we upgrade our plans, what happens to these credits? And the honest answer was, it goes away. Well, I asked a different question. I said, how does this plan handle international data? It's covered. The reason why our credits went away was because they're not needed anymore. And so by asking the direct question of what you truly want to know helps solve the problem so much quicker.
You had me mesmerized. That's why I'm late to the button there. So it's what I'm hearing from you, curiosity leads to the question. I'm curious about this Verizon bill, then the question comes. So really it's the principle I call the ASLA principle, ASLA. It should be CASLA. Be curious, ask, shut up, listen, ask. You just helped me. See, that's why I love hosting incredible guests like Jon today. That's the stepping stone. And you entrepreneurs out there, if you were like, well, how do I grow? How do I grow my network? Be curious, ask, shut up, listen, and ask. Just like you're saying, Jon. Got a great question. I love this question. How has your curiosity influenced your career path? How? Because you're living it. It's a great question.
Yeah, I would say curiosity has fully driven my career path. I didn't go to law school expecting to fall into association management and then to an operations career. But I stayed open. I stayed curious. When things came across my pathway, I was willing to look into it. And what me taking the job right out of law school, my goal was to end up in the Washington, D.C. area. And this job offer was in Baltimore. I'm like, close enough. For those who don't know, it's like 45 minutes, 35 minutes beltway to beltway between the two cities. So it's really right there. And so I just was willing to move across the country from, central Illinois to the East Coast and just being able to take on that opportunity. And you fast forward too, as my second role was with a startup. It was a tech trade association that was a startup that worked with startups. And, I was leaving a 100-year-old organization to go work for an organization where I was the fourth employee hired. And so really, curiosity has helped me in my career path as far as being able to take on new opportunities and explore and kind of think outside the box a little bit. But it's also been the driving force of why I've been able to succeed in my career, which is that ability to ask questions, again, not to be judgmental or demean but to truly be inquisitive about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we are doing it, and trying to find out if that is the best way.
Well, curious and questions is serve. That's what you do when you're serving. Curious, how can I help John? Hey, John, I got a question. What do you? And I like that. That's why I'm so excited you've been on the show, because that's another component of serving that people forget. Mm-hmm. This is a tough question, but you're a smart dude, so I know you could figure this out. Why are people losing curiosity?
There's several things that people need to understand, which is, it is human nature to fall into comfort, habits, and fear. We are biologically, psychologically built for safety, not for success. The stat goes that by the time you are 35, 95% of your actions, emotions, and thoughts are completely subconscious. So 5% of your active brain is making new ideas, and 95% of the time it's not. And so it's a natural occurrence. Like it's something not to be ashamed of. You fall into habits, fall into comfort, fall into fear because you are a human being. And that's what helped us stay alive in the caveman days, and what makes us, when we put our hand on the stove and it burns, not to do it again. But when it comes to innovation, growth, and change, they're the absolute enemy. And so you got to find ways to break free from that in asking questions, being curious, creating a curious culture. Implementing all of these strategies are a great way to get started.
In backstage, we were talking about Think and Grow Rich. And, our friend John Mitchell in this book and all that. But I'm reading Outwitting the Devil, which is his book he wrote back when he was alive. He died in 1970, but he wouldn't release it because he thought religious organizations, politics, and government and other institutions would come after him. Because what this says is he's actually interviewing the devil. It's a fascinating book, but it ties to curiosity. I'm coming there, folks. Just bear with me. Because he's talking about fear. What the devil does, it gives us fear. What does that do? We start drifting, and what do we lose? Curiosity. Yeah. Well, I can't be curious about that. I might get hit. Yeah. I can't be curious about that. I might get sick. I'm not going to eat that food. Talk about fear and curiosity, because I think they're combined somehow.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. Again, when I talk about curiosity, I think what it does allow us to do, both as individuals and as leaders, in what we do for organizations, and you've heard me say this before, which is it helps us look beyond our current situations and our own limitations. Again, going back to the childhood aspect, right? Like kids can act in reckless abandon, right? They're not worried about what's going to happen. What's going to happen if I do this right now, let alone what's going to happen in a week, a month, a year from now. And if you truly think about, it's something I have to talk about kind of that from that mindfulness consciousness level, talking about, Napoleon Hill, is that it's never the present really that holds us back. There's very rarely something in the moment that is hindering our progress, hindering our growth, that's weighing us down, that's causing anxiety, causing depression. It's always one of two things: looking back at the past and having regrets, or it's fear about the future. And the past has happened. There's nothing we can do about it. The future isn't written yet. And yet, so our fear is often in that future aspect, which hasn't even occurred. So curiosity, what it can do is help open up our minds. Reading about mindfulness and consciousness stuff, it really, what translates for me is the notion that to be present, be gracious of what I have in the moment, that I have no need right now. I might not make a paycheck next week, next month, a year from now, but right now I have the money in the bank I need. I have all these things. There is no need to worry and be fearful about something. So when an opportunity comes up, I can be curious about that opportunity, see if that's the right fit for me right now, and not go down this rabbit hole of fear and anxiety, and truly allows us to act in the moment.
Crazy. They're screaming. That is so powerful, because the thing about fear, we can remove it.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it. I've done made changes. We've talked about that, making changes. So let's look at this from the 8 to 5er, that person that's working in sales and marketing or admin at a company. How can they be curious without being pushy or, you know what I'm saying, over the top,
Here's something to do without even ever remotely coming across as pushy. And that's when your boss brings, or boss, manager, or whatever, brings you something. Don't ever say the word, I don't know, or I can't do that. That is what's driven my career, is my ability to not say those words. And what you do is say, instead of saying, I don't know, or I've never done that before, like, that's a great question. Let me go look into that. Let me go figure that out. And then dive into the internet, dive into the resources you have available, your colleagues, outside people, friends, family, whatever it is. And come back to that person and say, look, I really wasn't quite sure. That's not something I've done really in the past. You can even be honest about that and show, but I did some research, and here's what our solution should be, or here's what we should do, and here's how I can do that. And here's, and so you are, not only are you showing them that you have the ability to problem solve, use resources and research, but then you're also able to take those steps and say, I'm the one to do this. There is no greater way to advance your career than being a problem solver. Again, that's how I built my career as an operations person. Is I never said those words and just took on tasks I had never done before and just figured it out. But when you have that curious mindset and you're going proactively trying to bring that forward, again, just I think the best thing is before approaching your manager, the boss, whatever, is have those words in your head. Be curious, not judgmental. And so when you're bringing up an idea, you're bringing up a problem, you're bringing up something you see, like, hey, I've really been thinking about this. I'm seeing this. And I want to help the organization, right? Make it always about help. This is about servant leadership and giving back. Make everything that you do about helping them, about helping the organization, about helping your colleagues, about helping the mission. If you center your questions around that, and you're not asking just to poke fingers, to tear someone else down, but are doing it to find a better solution, there's no way, if you do that correctly, unless the boss is just a narcissist, which is a different story, there's no way to perceive that as being anything but just curious and trying to be helpful.
Magic. That's a huge golden nugget, audience. I mean, think about that. You're right. Because negative words do not work in a tribe. Together we serve. You're trying to serve as together. I can't do that, Jon. Jon, that's not going to work. That negative tone, like, how can I help? But that doesn't mean I can't go to the boss going, hey, I'm working on this problem. I got a question about this, this, and this. That's not being negative. That's being curious again. Here we go.
Yeah, and there were times, again, as an operations person, I had to be a jack of all trades. I oversaw legal, finance, accounting, HR, risk management, all these areas. And again, obviously, I have a law degree, so I could do a little more in the law side than most. But there were absolutely times where, like, I was told to look into something. And I'm like, you know what? This one is above my pay grade. Don't overcommit something that you can't do, especially if it's an area of high risk management like finance, accounting, and HR and legal. You got to be honest with yourself at the same time, but do the research. So again, you're presenting a solution, not that I can't. Be like, look, I've done some research. I think given where we are, the risks at play, we need to bring in outside counsel on this one. And I've already reached out to them to see if they could help. They could. Do you mind if I move forward with that? You didn't say no. You presented a solution to the problem while acknowledging you kept in mind what you're capable of and what is best for the organization.
absolutely brilliant, because you become smarter by bringing people in. You got large shoulders. You look like you train like I do. You don't have to have those shoulders to be all jack of all trades. It doesn't mean he worked on all of them. He'd just be able to put the pieces together. I brought the legal for the lawyer for the legal, but this. Yeah, don't do it all. Don't wear all hats.
Yeah.
Wear one or two hats. That's it, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I talk about resource management, to a lot of people that means money. To me, it means using the resources at your disposal. It's using that CPA that your company uses, using the lawyer. Again, do it in small pieces at first to make sure that, like, that's the direction we need to go or have to go. But utilizing resources, and one of the, again, talking about being curious and being creative in how you solve problems and ask questions. There's nothing I liked better throughout my career than using two vendors against each other. And I mean that respectfully. And I wouldn't take one proposal and send it to the other one. But what I do is say, hey, look, usually your vendors, all right, let's say you want to launch a new payroll system. Mm-hmm. You got one over here that's saying this and one over here saying this. They're both the best, right? They both think they're the best. So take the benefits company A is telling you and say, you know what? I've been talking to company A over here, and they say they're the best for these reasons. What are your thoughts? Don't lead them. Don't bash. Just say, what are your thoughts? And then you take what company B says back to company A. You do that a few times, and they're truly going to help you vet each other without you ever having to know anything, right? Like you could be dumb as a box of rocks and know nothing about payroll platforms. But if you do that enough times and you're willing to listen, play dumb as far as gathering information, and then just charting all that down, tracking it, and comparing the benefits and what your organization needs, you can launch the best thing for your company without having to know anything about payroll companies.
Easier to say no, too, because like, hey, B can do this, you can't. We have to go with B because we need this. And it just you can't control people human. They can still get upset. But from your heart, from your spirit, it's good. We got a great question that came up here. Timing's perfect. Whoever asking these questions is perfect. Can you share a major operational challenge you solved? So real time, what did you do?
Yeah. So I've been working with a startup recently, and they had a COO leave abruptly, and I'm just kind of filling as a fractional. But at the same time, they kind of knew that they had some efficiency problems. And I tell you, I walked into this, and their accounting system was a mess. They have a U.S. entity, a foreign entity, 3 bank accounts, 3 systems in which they are processing payments, 2 accountants, etc. And I walked into this, and I was told, like, I'm there to keep the trains on the tracks, and just, they have bookkeepers, they have accountants, everything's set up. It just need a monitor, right, from a COO, CFO level. Well, I was spending 5 to 10 hours a week for this company just reviewing everything, because everything went to everyone. Everything went everywhere. Everyone touched it. Everyone saw it. They're having problems with duplicate payments. I mean, the amount of people and hours that were working, and just even from the fact of just taking email, looking at it, and putting it into a folder was mind-blowing. And so after being there for just a few weeks, I was like, hey, here's what we got to do. We have got to bifurcate this system. There has to be a U.S. system and an international system. We need to create a singular accounts payable system in the U.S. and just simplify everything down. People think that to bring changes to organization, to free up time, to have more net revenue, you need these big capital changes. It's a lot of times it's in the process of procedures, how you do things. I limited what was happening when, where. And at the same time, I didn't reduce transparency at all. We could always go back and look at things. Things were now lined up to where they followed a particular system, and you saw it at the point in time in which you needed to see it, where before everyone saw everything at every step of the process, and it was just eating up hours, eating up money. People are working, 20-hour days, and I really just looked at the system, saw what was happening, simplified it down, saved the company money at the same time, as well as gave back 5 to 7 hours to probably 3 different people in the organization.
What a money you saved. The powerful thing about that story, you probably know, but this is the powerful thing. He's not a finance guy. That's not his expertise. Right? Am I saying the right thing? You're not.
Well, I've built operations, so I've always done the accounting and finance side as well, and I do have an MBA. But yeah, like that's not what I was hired to do, right? I wasn't hired to
That's it.
revamp their accounting system. I was hired to keep the trains on the tracks and look for inefficiencies. And man, it was like blew up right in my face. Like immediately, I was like, wow, like this is a lot. They clearly had someone kind of piecemeal this together little by little, didn't know what was out there. They tend to chase shiny little things. It's one of the, like I have to laugh sometimes. Like he's so worried about like wire transfer fees and exchange rates, and then asked me, should we adopt NetSuite because they emailed him. I'm like, hold on, like you're worried about a $20 wire fee and you want to adopt NetSuite, which is going to require 50 to 100 grand, usually a year, for connecting to other software and everything. It's an enterprise system. Like it's going to cost you 50 grand a minimum to launch it, plus being 30, 40, 50 grand a year for the service. Like no, we shouldn't do NetSuite. And this is my point where you keep kind of worrying about pennies. You're spending dollars to chase pennies. And that's the phrase I keep telling him. You're spending dollars to chase pennies. And I really kind of had to get through to him little by little. We've made some changes. It's probably taking 3 months to do what I could have done in 2 weeks, but we're slowly getting there.
How much money do you think you saved them? Approximate.
I mean, when you're talking about time, just in time alone, I would say I saved them 20 to 30 grand in a year. Just time alone.
Pays half of somebody's salary, yep. 40 is usually the big. I mean, for 3 months, change. And imagine they keep going on. They did the NetSuite and they did all that. I mean, it's like spend $50,000 to save $20. It's like, hello. Yeah. But we get caught up in our business. That's why an outsider like you comes in. And this can be done on their legal side. You could do on their HR side, their sales side, their marketing side, not being an expert. And that's the point I wanted to make. But that's just not you. That could be having somebody like you in the company doing that, just overseeing the whole umbrella, right?
Yeah. So, there's a couple of things. Is it does take a unique personality, I think, sometimes to bring about these changes, right? It's got to be someone who sees the angles for the efficiency and effectiveness aspect, but it's also got to be willing, again, someone to kind of stir the pot a little bit. Again, the CEO was very, very worried about some duplicate payments that were happening and kept, as we're making these changes to stop that from happening, he kept saying, but how are we going to make sure we don't make duplicate payments? I was like, follow the system. The reason why it was happening was no process and procedures were being followed because there were none. We're setting this up and it's going to eliminate the duplicate payments. And what did he do? Sent something to the AP email that were receipts, not invoices, and got entered into our accounts payable. Now, luckily, I saw it happening, so I was like, I inquired, say, were these receipts or these invoices? Because they got entered into our AP system to pay, and the operations manager that I'm working with to kind of train him a little bit, he emailed me separately, and I had to say to him, I said, look, you did a huge disservice by not replying to the whole email. In an operations role, when the CEO is worried about duplicate payments, when the CEO is worried about efficiency, you weren't willing and able to say to him, hey, you caused these to go into our system to be set up for payments. That's something he needed to know. Now, he's probably not quite ready to do that yet. And, I am, and I'm paid to, be that operational professional in the room. And so I went back to him and said, hey, look, you're worried about duplicate payments. This could have happened had I not caught it, right? So again, we have to follow the process procedures. This email address is used for this purpose and this purpose only. This is what you use over here. And so again, there's some training, but you got to have someone who sees the angles and is willing to not be a yes person. A yes person cannot be someone who drives change. And a lot of times the person who you need to create change is not going to be the person that you want to hang on to long-term, and vice versa.
Yeah, Steve Jobs, when you say yes person, and my mind goes right to Steve Jobs. Absolutely not a yes person.
Yeah.
A listening person, but not a yes person. Look what happened. Man, time flew. We got to take a break. We got to give Jon some water. He's been talking the whole time, giving his golden nuggets flying out of his mouth, which I love. So let's take about 5, 6, 7 minute break, and we'll be right back with Jon Bassford. Let's be curious.
When this would happen, I'd feel defeated, isolated, and like a failure. But my resources were limited at the time, so what was I supposed to do? This is what I call the DIY dilemma. Putting yourself in these situations where you have to struggle through it on your own, even though it's less productive. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that it's good to do DIY projects and save some money. These are not bad concepts, and I know many people are probably wondering, what the hell is the big deal? Well, for me, in home improvement, I don't enjoy it. I'm not good at it. I waste my time, and I still don't save any money. So why put myself through that? But I do agree. There are greater tragedies in life than wasting a weekend and a few $100s on a failed DIY attempt. And the truth is, the DIY dilemma is much more than home improvement. In fact, it's everywhere. So the defeated, frustrated parent pulling their hair out, trying to get the kids to all the events on time while forgetting to eat dinner. Picture that solo parent struggling to the airport with 5 bags, 3 kids, and a family chihuahua. It's the volunteer stepping up to lead a committee, giving back their time, to realize that the term committee is not so accurate. You all know what happens. No one shows up for meetings, don't respond to emails, and certainly no one's stepping up to help. So what does the leader do? Everything themselves. It's the business owner who doesn't trust anyone with the bookkeeping and yet always gets it wrong. It's the executive who thinks ideas have to come from them and keeps wondering why they get the same results. The DIY dilemma is all too common. You have to grind it out. You can only trust yourself. No one is here to help you. And again, if you want something done right. These are the stories we get told time and time again. So that's what we do. We fall on the sword and suffer through it alone. We actually wear self-sacrifice as a badge of honor. But the DIY dilemma costs us time, money, and energy. And it also isolates, limits creativity, and reduces our potential. No wonder we feel burned out and stuck in a cycle.
Even though our plan evolved here and there, your vision never changed.
You're my first financial advisor. Do you want to see my budget spreadsheet?
I want to see your vision board.
Northwestern Mutual, a better way to money.
Do you know that studies show teams outperform individuals 82% of the time? And that prolonged feelings of isolation and loneliness is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, increasing your risk of premature death by 26%.
Wow.
We are literally getting less done and harming ourselves in the process. So why do we get stuck in the DIY dilemma? Surprise, surprise, there's studies for that too. And these studies would show that it happens for one of 4 reasons: ego, cultural conditioning, lack of resources, and fear of burdening others. Just think back to those earlier examples. How many times do we fall into the DIY trap without even knowing it? It's no wonder that so many of us feel burned out, isolated, and stuck in this trap of feel like we're constantly doing more and getting less done. It's no wonder that we feel like we're stuck to just we're doomed to repeat this over and over again. But what if we weren't? What if there was another way? One that didn't lead to so much burnout, frustration, and isolation? Curiosity is an answer. As curiosity is the bridge from burnout to breakthrough, as it helps us look beyond our current assumptions, question the status quo, and open the door to new possibilities. And it does it with 3 fundamental shifts. The first is mindset. It simply challenges us to ask the question, is there a better way? To paraphrase Einstein, the thinking that gets you into a situation is not the same thinking that will get you out of it. What it does is allow us to look beyond our current situations and our own limitations.
Man, I could listen to him all day. My camera's all messed up. I got love. There I am. Yeah, isn't that powerful? And I want to bring that stat up again when I bring him back. But It's really as simple as John's making it. Me and John aren't special, and he'll say that, but we special. We take action. We move forward. We move the needle. We do something. Like he said, don't go to people and say, I can't do that. Just say, I'll get it done. Just give me some time, or whatever that is. Be positive with your connections with people, when you're talking to people, when you're communicating with people. Be positive. You can come back and say, you know what, I couldn't do it, but I found somebody else to do it. I love that he mentioned that. I want to mention that again because I had to learn it. I'm 64. I learned that lesson 5 years ago. So about 40 of my years, I'm like, I had to know everything. And it's hard. It's heartbreaking. It's stressful. There's so many negative words tied to that. So don't do that, but always be willing to help and be part of it. Let's bring John back. There's John. What's that stat again you just said on that TED Talk?
Teams outperform individuals 82% of the time. Is it that one?
Yeah, that's it. Together we serve.
Yep.
You can see why I brought John on. It's exactly, we can't do this alone. Solopreneur, there's no such thing. Yeah, you might have your own business, I think, like John does, and I do. Well, I don't have a partner, but yeah, a lot of you entrepreneurs are solopreneurs, but you're not. And I love that. Let's bring it up. Let's bring the book up because now we can read this and learn more about this great stuff that he's given us. Let me pull the link up. Talk about the book and what you're excited about, what we're going to hear from the book.
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, when I really kind of grasped the whole aspect of Curious and how it drove my career, how it drove my childhood, everything about my life, I think it's driven my curiosity. The book really wrote itself. And what I talk about is, for the curious leader, it's about, unlocking innovation, empowering teams, and driving change. And to do that, leaders have to go through 3 shifts from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. They have to have a shift towards operational excellence, which I define as an organization's ability to achieve its intended results as efficiently and effectively as possible. And lastly, as you've heard me say before, unless you're the lead singer of a one-person band, you got to bring the team along with you. And that's where a curious culture comes into play. And curious culture is all about, creating this environment that we're talking about, where people can speak up, speak out, bring ideas, point out problems, all of these things that truly allow an organization to make meaningful and lasting change, not just once a year in a strategic planning process or in the employee review process, but every single day, every single week of the year.
See, I love what you said about that together. Sports comes to my mind. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Namath, NFL. Yeah, they got all the, Tom Brady gets all the limelight. But he'll tell you, it was the coach, it was this, it was that. Even tennis players, golfers, they have strength coach. They have tennis coaches. They don't do it alone. So why do we do that in business? Right?
Yeah, I think the main thing is ego. It's we think that it got ingrained in us, somewhere along the lines of business school, experience, whatever, that being a leader means that you have to have all the answers. And I think, again, going back to asking questions and being curious, there were times where I knew the answer, but I just flat out played dumb because the best way for me to get the most intel or to hear other people or get their thinking in all kinds of things, whether you're vetting a vendor or you want to see the problem-solving skills of your team, be dumb. Be willing to be dumb. Simon Sinek tells a story about being hired by a Fortune 500 company and sitting in a boardroom where someone was pitching them. I don't remember the details. And the consultant got done, and it just crickets in the room. And Simon Sinek slowly raises his hand, is like, I don't get it. I have no idea what you're talking about, what the value is whatsoever. In the minute he said that, one by one around the table, people were raising their hands, right? People are so afraid to admit they don't understand something, even when pretending to understand is going to hurt the organization. I talk a lot about, the common phrase is, paralysis by analysis. And I actually don't agree with that phrase. I think it's paralysis by indecision. The root problem is the inability to make a decision because we don't want to get it wrong. We don't feel like we have enough information. The analysis, the over-analysis is the cover-up. if we keep analyzing, we don't have the information yet, so we can't make a decision. When the real problem is we're unwilling to make a decision. And again, so it's all about gathering as much information as possible. And here's a secret I want to lay on everyone. Rarely is there ever a right answer. There might be a better one than other ones, but again, the payroll example is a great example. If you have 2 payroll companies and you have 10 people who've used both, 5 are going to hate one and 5 are going to love it. 5 are going to hate the other one and 5 are going to love the other one. Like that's just the nature of reality of software and most services out there. There's never going to be a 100% right answer. You just, again, got to gather the information, be willing to be dumb in the process, and be inquisitive and tap into resources around you so you can drive decisions and move your organization forward. Because I can tell you right now, what's going to happen if you don't make a decision is you're going to stay stuck where you are, which you already know isn't working. So it's better to take that chance, make the decision, risk failure, and drive things forward.
Man, you have got me fired up right now. I've made some big decisions in the last couple of months with thousands of dollars. And my partner's like, you sure? I said, yeah. I thought about it. I could sleep on it 3-4 nights. And one of my guests on my podcast, Sandy Kusana, who's the joyful optimist, I love that phrase. She says decisions are a freeway. You go to the freeway and hit a stop sign or a street. Go right is the wrong decision. Left is the right decision. Straight is not making a decision. Well, you stay on the same road and keep going, nothing's happening. Even if you go right and make the wrong decision, you can pivot from it. COVID taught us that.
Yeah.
So I love that you mentioned that, because being curious also helps you make decisions, which is why you're such a big proponent, right? Talk about decisions and curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's about this constant, several elements here, right? One is the aspect of like constantly looking at what we're doing and whether it's the best way, right? That's part of the process. But to truly create a curious culture that drives innovation, growth, and change, you also have to be willing to risk failure. When we're talking about nothing 100% being the right answer all the time, being able to get wrong, knowing that staying on the current course is a failure because you already know that course. You got to learn to take risks, be curious about what's possible. You've probably heard the saying before, hire slow and fire fast. I'd say do both at a decent pace, right? Like including making decisions. Yes, you want to take the time to get the resources, get the information, make a sound decision. You got to do all your due diligence, but at the end of the day, you want to do that as quickly as possible and make the decision as quickly as possible. And if you've made a decision that isn't the right one, change quickly. If you chose company B and you're vetting A and B is not working, make sure you got some outs there. Make sure you don't want to bet the farm on a decision, right? You want to make sure that you can test things out. And most people will give you a trial or a free consult or whatever it may be to kind of test the ropes a little bit. But make sure you're gathering the information, making a sound decision, be willing to execute on that. And if you've gotten it wrong, reverse it quickly and go the other direction.
If you haven't made a wrong decision, I've heard from a very wealthy guy, he says you're not an entrepreneur businessman.
Yeah.
Buffett, Cuban, Gates, Musk, naming big names, Jobs. How many mistakes did he make?
Yep.
And wasn't it? It's innate in the nature of business and entrepreneurship. But the key is the mindset of pivoting. I kind of love, man. You know what? I love this guy. This guy is just awesome. Simple. Here's a question that came up that's, again, great timing. What advice do you have for leaders facing operational challenges?
That's a big one. I guess it depends on what the operational challenges are. But I think the first thing is to get curious, right? Like to get curious and dive deep into what the problem is. I think that is the problem most leaders make, is not doing their due diligence and diving deep enough to truly understand what that problem is. And for me, again, talking about curious culture and embracing your team and tapping into that, is you got to get your team along, right? Like if you know something's not working, bring your team together and be honest. Like, look, guys, we ran the numbers last month, and what we are doing is not working. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what's working, what's not working. It may take a little time to have that open discussion happen out in the open in a group meeting. So if you have to start one-on-one and truly show that you want this type of feedback from them, and by saying, hey, look, we made a bad decision over here, know that they can say that to you one-on-one and not fear of fired, is a great way. And if you and your team can't tackle the problem, or not, it's not in your wheelhouse, or you don't have the expertise, going back and forth about the paralysis by lack of decision, majority of that time it happens because it's a part of the business that's not in the wheelhouse of the CEO. And so they don't feel comfortable making a decision. So when that happens, if you can't get to the bottom of it internally, and you don't feel comfortable in making those decisions, it's when you do have to bring in someone from the outside. Bring in a fractional person or a consultant that can help you get to the bottom without hiring all new staff and that sort of thing, but just on a temporary basis to pinpoint the problems. That's why we're excited about our audits that we offer, that really kind of come into an organization and really help you diagnose decision-making problems, alignment problems, culture problems, operational problems, efficiency problems. And we can do it in a really, really quick way that allows you to have more information about your business, maybe even some things that you've known in the back of your head, you just weren't willing to face, but getting that intel as quickly as possible and making tweaks and changes to improve the operations.
Team, you said it 3 times, I think, maybe 4 times. It wasn't, hey, Joe Smith, you made a mistake. It was, as a team, Joe made the mistake, but as a team, how we can have come from this wrong decision.
Yeah, 100%. One part of that I will caution is, majority of the leaders that I have worked with or somehow been around and been able to witness how they operate. The vast majority of CEOs and leaders and founders who don't open up to kind of a curious culture and bring their team in and believe that every idea has to come from them, they're the final decision maker on everything, all those type of things. The first thing that happens when things go wrong, they bring their team together and say, what happened here? Like, I mean, I literally have had someone ask a staff, why aren't we Amazon? After 27 years of being in existence, because they were founded the same year as Amazon, when the longest tenured employee was like 7 years. I'm like, my immediate thought was like, I don't know, you tell us. Like I wasn't here at the beginning. So a lot of times, so make sure that again, that be curious, not judgmental. If you're going to create an environment of a curious culture, first, again, you have to break down yourself and open up ideas and possibilities and solutions to the team. And while you're doing that, don't be quick to point fingers at the team when you've been the driving force behind what the organization has been doing. And that's a tough one sometimes.
Yeah. Curious culture. I love that you said that. Culture should be empathy, I think, and curiosity and decision. That should be a component to it. And HR people out there, if you're listening, make your team curious, please, 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 because everybody will get along so much better. We're coming close to the end here. How can people get the book?
Yeah,
what's the title again? Give them the title.
If you go to Amazon and search The Curious Leader, it's gonna pop up right away. So, and obviously, if you want to add my name, you can. But usually, I don't know if because I search it so often to see where the rankings are, but it comes up right away every time. So it's got a light bulb cover, Curious Leader at the top, so you can't miss it.
And what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, the best ways are through my consulting website is think-lateral.com. My consulting firm, I named Lateral Solutions as where that comes from. And then my personal brand is simply Jon Bassford, John without an H, and then Bass like a fish, Ford like a car.com. And those are the best 2 ways to reach out to me.
Yeah, if you got a business and you're interested in curiosity and changing your culture, helping systems, there's your guy. I just reach out because I know he does the audit. He mentioned he does a free audit. He may not be able to help you. You guys might be rocking and rolling. And you know what? Knowing Jon as well as I do at this point, he'd be super happy about that. He's not out trying to pick up business just because you're doing well, not doing well. He wants to help the ones that need the help. So it's great. The last minute or two, let's ask this question. Similar to the podcast, but it's got a little spin on it. So I reserved a Learjet for you. It's a seats 4, one of those fast jets that go anywhere in the world. Who would you're going to sit in one of the chairs, but the 3 empty chairs, who would you invite to go on a 4 or 5 or 6 hour flight, dead or alive, and where would you go? What would be the destination?
All right. Well, I'm going to give you 2 answers here because I got it. The first answer has to be my wife, my mom, and my son, which is, not a cop out, but it's truly genuine.
No, it's
like that would be a trip around the world. Like my son loves learning about cultures. My mom hasn't traveled a whole lot until her later years, and just love to travel with them. From a business and brand sense, you and I have talked about this. Gary Vaynerchuk has to be one of those seats. I love what his message, how he speaks differently than a lot of other entrepreneurial, multimillionaire, billionaire influencers out there. Joe Dispenza is one. So much what he talks about is over my head. I'm trying every day to learn more and more, but just to tap into those 2. And then the other one, probably Napoleon Hill. I think, his book is lasted the test of time and best-selling business book out there in history. And, being able to tap into those 3 minds, Gary Vaynerchuk from the business and marketing sense, Joe Dispenza from the mindfulness, consciousness, energy sense, and then kind of Napoleon Hill, how you can bring them both together. We just have an amazing conversation.
Man, I got to be the co-pilot because those things fly on their own. I'll have my pilot. I'll go, pilot, you take over. I got to jump in the 5th chair there because that is, wow. By the way, shout out, I listen to Gary V's podcast every week. Unbelievable. Tea with Gary, game changer. You're going to shout, hey, Gary, you want to sponsor the show? Just reach out to me. I'm half kidding. With that being said, Jon, thank you for being an incredible guest. You have the heart to really help people, and that's what we love having on this show. And, people reach out to him. If you need help, he's the guy to reach out to. With that being said, thank you all. We'll see you next week, Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. I hate time zones. I always mess them up. At 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Together We Serve TV show. And share this with others. Let's impact as many people as we can. Everybody have a great day. Thanks, Jon. Talk to you later.
Thanks for having me.